For a century, the Titanic has been hidden in darkness. But now, a new investigation is about to drain the ocean. We uncover critical new pieces of evidence not previously visible. A team of scientists, equipped with cutting-edge tools, now tackle the long-standing mysteries of the disaster.
At 12,500 feet below the surface, where sunlight has never reached and pressure would crush a human instantly,
have to dive down through 12,000 feet of water.
It's incredibly challenging to work at Titanic.
Something just broke 112 years of silence. An advanced underwater drone slipped inside the Titanic, navigating corridors no living person has entered since April 1912. The footage it captured left the entire research team speechless.
The team deploys an ROV to capture thousands of digital images of every point on the wreck.
In one hidden chamber, sealed for over a century, the cameras revealed something so disturbing that the crew debated whether the world should ever see it. This was not another exterior survey. This was an invasion into rooms where time stopped.
Banks of computers crunch the raw data, turning millions of sonar points into a complex model of the wreck.
Where personal belongings still rest exactly where panicked hands dropped them, and where the final moments of more than 1,500 souls remain frozen in darkness. What the drone uncovered challenges everything we thought we knew about that fateful night. Stay with us, because the deeper it went, the more terrifying it became. The North Atlantic is one of the most unforgiving places on Earth. Its waters are known for sudden storms, freezing temperatures, and currents that shift without warning. Waves can swell without notice, and fog rolls in thick enough to swallow ships whole. It was in this hostile environment that a research vessel anchored hundreds of miles from the nearest coastline, bracing against swells that rocked the deck with relentless rhythm. On board was a team assembled for a mission unlike any before. Their objective was simple to describe, but nearly impossible to achieve. Send a machine into the heart of the Titanic and capture what no human eye had witnessed in over a century. The wreck lies nearly 12,500 feet beneath the surface. At that depth, the pressure is catastrophic, roughly 380 times stronger than what we experience at sea level. No human diver could survive there. Even most machines fail within minutes. The team understood that every element of this mission demanded precision beyond anything attempted before. Months of preparation had brought together specialists from every relevant field. Deep-sea archaeologists studied historical records to anticipate what the drone might encounter. Marine engineers inspected every cable, seal, and thruster. Drone pilots rehearsed navigation through simulated narrow hallways and collapsed spaces. Sonar experts calibrated instruments to interpret the faintest echoes of metal and wood. Preservation specialists analyzed archival blueprints to identify fragile structures that could crumble at the slightest disturbance. Every member of the crew knew that a single misstep could destroy not only equipment worth millions, but also irreplaceable glimpses into history. The centerpiece of the mission was the drone itself. Compact yet resilient, its frame was forged from titanium and specialized alloys designed to withstand crushing forces while resisting corrosion from over a century of saltwater immersion. Every seal, bolt, and joint had been tested repeatedly in pressure chambers that simulated the punishing conditions of the deep ocean. Engineers understood that one tiny flaw could spell disaster, sending months of work and priceless footage into the abyss forever. Powerful LED lights were installed with adjustable brightness, capable of illuminating the ship's interior without stirring up the silt that covered every surface. Too much light would cloud the cameras with suspended particles. Too little would leave the drone navigating blind. Custom diffusers softened the beam to prevent damage to delicate textures like engraved wood or deteriorating fabric. Onboard artificial intelligence monitored orientation and corrected movements instantly, countering sudden currents that could twist the drone into jagged beams or collapsed walls. Multiple thrusters allowed it to hover, slide sideways, and pivot with precision no human operator could achieve alone. When final checks were complete, the crew gathered in quiet focus. This was no ordinary launch. The drone was slowly lowered into the frigid water, its tether unspooling like a lifeline into the unknown. From the control room, the team watched as its lights disappeared into blackness. Initially, the camera feed displayed nothing but dark, punctuated by drifting particles floating like phantom sparks. Minutes passed. Then the ocean floor began to reveal itself, scattered with rusted debris and fragments of a world frozen in catastrophe. Wood planks jutted from the silt, some twisted by the force of water, others mysteriously upright, defying expectation. Then, through clouds of sediment, a massive shadow emerged. The bow of the Titanic rose from the darkness like a submerged cathedral, its iconic shape unmistakable even after more than 100 years. Rust clung to the structure like stubborn veins, and the surface bore scars from decades of corrosion and deep-sea currents. Gasps filled the control room. For the first time, the team realized they were not merely observers of history. They were witnesses to its undisturbed remains. With the exterior mapped and systems stable, the crew prepared for the next stage. The drone would now attempt what no expedition had ever achieved. It would enter the Titanic's interior, navigating spaces that had been sealed in darkness since the night the ship sank. What awaited inside would test the limits of both technology and human understanding. The drone slipped through a narrow opening in the collapsed hull, its lights cutting through water that had not been disturbed in over a century. Every movement stirred clouds of silt that drifted through the beam like ghostly curtains. The corridors it now entered were cramped, unstable, and filled with remnants of lives interrupted mid-journey. Rust-covered rails twisted at unnatural angles. Sections of walls had buckled inward under pressures no architect had ever anticipated. This was a place where time had simply stopped, where the final echoes of panic and desperation remained frozen in the arrangement of every object. What the cameras revealed defied expectation. The near-freezing temperatures and oxygen-starved depths had slowed decay in ways researchers had only theorized about. Some sections of the ship appeared almost pristine despite the chaos that surrounded them. Chairs remained upright. Tables sat where they had been set for meals, never finished. Dishes were still scattered across floors, and fragments of bedding clung to collapsed bunks. The preservation was staggering, transforming the wreck from a disaster site into a frozen museum of ordinary life. In one room, the drone's lights fell upon a child's porcelain doll sitting quietly in the silt. Its painted eyes stared upward as if waiting for someone to return. Nearby, a pair of leather shoes rested side by side, their shapes perfectly intact while everything around them had surrendered to corrosion. A suitcase lay half-buried against a wall, its clasp still closed as though someone had set it down moments before the water rushed in. Each object whispered stories that survivor testimonies could never fully capture. These were not relics of a ship. They were evidence of interrupted lives, frozen at the exact moment of catastrophe. The grand staircase area appeared on the monitors next. Once a symbol of elegance and prestige, it had been the architectural centerpiece of the Titanic's first-class section. Wealthy passengers had descended these steps in evening gowns and tailored suits, surrounded by carved oak panels and gilded fixtures. Crystal chandeliers had once cast warm light across polished wood, illuminating faces filled with confidence in a voyage that promised safe passage to a new world. Now, long strands of rust and bacteria, known as rusticles, hung from its remains like fragile orange curtains. The wood had mostly rotted away, and entire sections had collapsed into piles of debris. Yet the shape was still recognizable. The iron railings traced the outline of what had once been grandeur, now reduced to a skeleton draped in decay. The contrast between past splendor and present ruin was almost unbearable to witness. Moving deeper into unexplored sections, the drone navigated hallways only a few feet wide. Operators guided it with extreme caution, aware that one wrong move could damage fragile artifacts or trap the machine forever. Sharp fragments of rusted metal hung loose from ceilings. Walls had folded inward at unnatural angles. Some passages were completely blocked by debris, forcing the drone to retreat and find alternate routes. Each inch of progress required deliberate calculation. Then the cameras captured something that made the entire team pause. At the end of a partially collapsed corridor stood a sealed doorway, its frame strangely intact despite the destruction surrounding it. The edges appeared unnaturally clean, almost as if whatever lay behind had been deliberately protected from the chaos. A faint trail of disturbed silt seemed to drift outward from the gap beneath the door, as though something had once shifted inside. The operators exchanged uneasy glances. Some speculated it might lead to storage rooms or crew quarters. Others quietly suggested it could hold something far more disturbing. With no safe way to force entry, they marked the location for later investigation and guided the drone onward. But the image lingered in everyone's mind. The Titanic was revealing that it still held secrets buried deep within its shattered remains. What truths had that sealed doorway protected for over a century? The answer would come soon enough, but first, the footage began revealing evidence that challenged the accepted history of the disaster itself. For decades, researchers believed they understood how the Titanic sank. Survivor accounts, early studies of the wreck, and computer simulations had shaped a widely accepted version of events. The ship struck an iceberg, flooded progressively, broke apart, and plunged to the ocean floor. It seemed straightforward, but the drone footage told a different story. As the cameras explored section after section, researchers noticed patterns that contradicted the historical record. Some areas believed to have been completely destroyed were found standing nearly intact. Certain hallways and rooms showed far less damage than expected, while other sections thought to be stable had collapsed entirely. This uneven mix of destruction and preservation suggested that the sinking had been far more chaotic and complex than anyone realized. The placement of debris provided critical clues. Twisted metal beams and broken structural supports revealed the direction and intensity of forces that tore the ship apart. In one corridor, a cluster of furniture had been swept into a tight pile against a bulkhead, suggesting a powerful surge of water had rushed through with extraordinary speed. Nearby, a line of shoes stretched toward a collapsed doorway, their positions implying a group of passengers had been fleeing in the same direction when the flooding overtook them. Objects frozen in place became forensic witnesses to the final hours. A wine bottle sat perfectly upright on the floor, its cork still sealed, surrounded by scattered dishes and overturned chairs. The bottle's position defied the chaos around it, raising questions about how it had survived when everything else was thrown into disorder. Had it been placed there deliberately, or was its survival simply a matter of chance? Each artifact added another piece to a puzzle that grew more complicated with every room the drone entered. In one small storage area, the cameras captured something that stopped researchers mid-discussion. Heavy objects, including what appeared to be a metal safe, were lodged against the ceiling rather than the floor. The positioning suggested they had been lifted there by a violent force, either a sudden surge of water rushing upward through the compartment or an internal pressure event more explosive than the gradual flooding described in historical accounts. Experts observing the footage noted that irregularities like this hinted at events that remain unexplained, moments of destruction that occurred faster and with more violence than the accepted timeline suggested. The drone's laser mapping technology began generating precise, three-dimensional models of the interior spaces. These digital reconstructions allowed researchers to analyze structural failures from angles never before possible. They could trace how flooding had spread through the ship, identify which compartments failed first, and calculate the forces required to bend steel beams at the angles captured on camera. For the first time, science could compare physical evidence with survivor testimonies and test which accounts matched reality. Some discoveries aligned with what survivors described, others did not. The discrepancies raised new questions about the sequence of events during those final hours. How had certain sections survived intact while adjacent compartments were obliterated? What explained the strange patterns of objects scattered in ways that defied simple flooding? And why had some passengers clearly attempted to flee toward areas of the ship that offered no escape? The footage painted a picture of a disaster marked by speed, chaos, and unimaginable force. But these revelations were merely preparation for what came next. As the drone pushed deeper into a section that had never been explored, it approached a hidden chamber that would contain the most disturbing discovery of the entire mission. The drone maneuvered through a passage choked with fallen beams and decades of accumulated silt. Every movement required surgical precision. The operators guided it carefully through narrow gaps, watching for sudden shifts in the unstable debris. One wrong motion could collapse the passage entirely or trap the machine in darkness forever. Tension filled the control room as the live feed showed nothing but swirling particles and shadows. Then the lights illuminated a wall, and beyond it, an opening that led to a space completely untouched since 1912. The chamber appeared frozen in a single moment. Furniture lay toppled but intact. Suitcases and shoes were scattered across the floor, exactly where they had fallen. Dishes and personal effects rested in positions that suggested frantic activity interrupted by sudden catastrophe. The cold, oxygen-starved water had preserved the scene with eerie precision. It was as though the room had been waiting in silence for someone to witness what remained inside. The drone's lights swept slowly across the space, capturing details no one had expected. Then the beam reached the far corner, and every person in the control room went silent. What appeared on the monitors could not be mistaken for wreckage or shadows. The cameras had found human remains. The figure was small, unmistakably a child. The body lay slightly curled to one side, with fragments of clothing still clinging to the skeletal frame. The posture suggested sleep, but the context made the truth inescapable. As the drone moved closer, a second form came into view just inches away. This body was positioned so close that it appeared the two had been holding each other when life slipped away. Their arrangement suggested a final act of comfort in their last moments, a gesture of protection that the ocean had preserved for over a century. Two children, alone in darkness, clinging to each other as the water rose around them. No one spoke. Several team members covered their mouths. Others turned away from their screens, visibly shaken. For 112 years, these children had remained hidden in darkness, sealed inside a part of the ship no expedition had ever reached. Then the cameras revealed something that deepened the horror. Just a few feet from the small bodies lay a single adult shoe, half buried in silt. The stitching was still faintly visible despite the passage of time. Its presence told a story no one wanted to voice aloud. An adult had been with the children in those final moments, but the body was gone. The discovery raised questions that haunted the team long after the footage ended. Had the adult perished elsewhere and been swept away by currents as the wreck settled, or had something far worse occurred? Had someone made an impossible choice in the chaos, abandoning the children to save themselves? The shoe remained as silent testimony to whatever had happened in that chamber, a witness to decisions made under pressures no human should ever face. The operators guided the drone backward, retreating slowly from the space. After extensive discussion, the team agreed to keep most of the footage private. Only carefully selected still images were saved for historical study. The full recordings were locked away, and even some team members were restricted from reviewing the unedited footage. The discovery had changed everything. It was no longer just an exploration. It had become an intrusion into a grave. As the drone withdrew through the corridors and began its ascent toward the surface, a heavy silence filled the control room. The sealed doorway glimpsed earlier had protected a truth the world was not prepared to see. What they had uncovered would haunt everyone involved for the rest of their lives. The drone broke the surface and was lifted carefully back onto the research vessel. The mission was over, but its weight remained. The team stood together in silence, processing images that no one had expected to find. Below them, the Titanic continued its slow surrender to the ocean, holding secrets that might never be fully revealed. In the weeks that followed, information about the expedition was shared only within select academic circles. Historians and marine scientists reviewed the data behind closed doors, debating what should be released and what should remain protected. The team issued carefully worded statements that acknowledged the findings without confirming the most disturbing details. Official silence only deepened public curiosity. Small leaks began to emerge. Blurred images and fragments of data surfaced online, reportedly shared by someone connected to the research team. They were quickly removed, but not before being copied and reposted across forums and social media accounts. The rumors spread faster than any official response could contain. What exactly had the drone found? Why was the footage being kept from the public? The mystery grew larger with every unanswered question. The discoveries reignited debates that had surrounded the Titanic for decades. Some scientists argued that continued exploration was essential. The wreck is deteriorating rapidly, and valuable information could be lost forever if researchers do not document it now. Advanced technology offers the chance to preserve details that will soon vanish beneath layers of rust and marine growth. Waiting is not an option when time itself is erasing the evidence. Others pushed back with equal conviction. The Titanic is not merely a shipwreck. It is a graveyard for more than 1,500 people who lost their lives that night. Religious leaders and ethicists urged that the site be treated as sacred ground, protected from intrusion, regardless of scientific value. Families of victims expressed mixed feelings. Some felt grateful that their ancestors were being remembered through careful documentation. Others felt anger and pain at the idea of cameras moving through a place where so many perished. The ethical questions extend beyond this single expedition. Who decides what is appropriate to explore or recover? The Titanic lies in international waters, and no single government has authority over the site. Commercial interests have already attempted to profit from the wreck, recovering artifacts for auction and charging wealthy tourists for submersible visits. The line between exploration and exploitation grows thinner with every passing year. Yet the footage captured by the drone serves a purpose beyond controversy. It reminds the world that the Titanic was more than a symbol of ambition and hubris. It was a vessel carrying real people with real lives, dreams, and fears. The objects frozen in those corridors, the shoes and suitcases and scattered belongings, represent individuals whose stories were cut short in a matter of hours. The children discovered in that hidden chamber were not statistics in a historical record. They were human beings who died in terror and darkness, holding on to each other until the end. The Titanic also teaches lessons that remain painfully relevant. It stands as a monument to overconfidence in technology and the consequences of ignoring warnings. The ship's designers believed they had engineered something unsinkable. They placed their faith in watertight compartments and modern construction methods that seemed to guarantee safety. Passengers boarded with absolute trust in human achievement. First-class travelers sipped champagne and admired the grand interiors, certain they were riding the pinnacle of civilization across the Atlantic. That faith cost more than 1,000 lives and left a scar on history that has never fully healed. The wreck beneath the waves serves as a permanent reminder that nature does not negotiate with human ambition. As technology advances, future expeditions will likely push even deeper into the wreck. Smaller drones, more sophisticated imaging, and artificial intelligence capable of navigating tighter spaces will reveal details that remain hidden today. Scientists will continue racing against the clock, documenting every artifact before the ocean claims it permanently. And with each new discovery, the debates will intensify. How far should exploration go? When does curiosity become intrusion? What do we owe to the dead? The drone has returned to the surface, but the Titanic remains below, silent and unchanging. It lies as both grave and guardian, holding fragments of lives that the world has not forgotten. Every rusted beam and scattered artifact forms part of a narrative that connects past and present, reminding us that tragedy does not fade simply because time passes. The footage captured on this mission offers a rare window into a place of loss, illuminated by the cold light of technology. It forces us to confront mortality, memory, and the cost of progress. It challenges us to consider what we owe to those who came before and how we choose to remember them. Some truths wait beneath the surface, terrifying, heartbreaking, and unforgettable. The Titanic has revealed its secrets, yet it endures, a silent witness to human fragility and resilience, speaking to those who look and listen closely. Which moment from this footage unsettled you the most? Share your thoughts with us below.